Welcome to the Barry Podcast, an unofficial official podcast covering the hit HBO series Barry. I'm one of your hosts, Jamie G, Esquire of the Fifth, Master of the Hard Five. And I'm here with my co-host, Magnum Mills, and we're going to talk about the third episode of Barry, titled Chapter 3, Make the Unsafe Choice.
Well, I am Magnum Mills, and the title of my autobiography may or may not be Making the Unsafe Choice. Could also be quoted on my Tinder profile. Not going to say that one way or the other. Thank you for checking out the Barry Podcast. Find us wherever you get your pods. Just search for Barry Podcast. We're on social media at Barry Podcast. You can find our YouTube channel at joeblowfootballshow.com. If you could, please take 10 seconds or so to comment, rate, follow, like, subscribe. Just do one of those things. You know the deal. Everyone asks you to do it, but we ask you because it really helps other people find the show. So we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And here's the deal. When we're covering new episodes of Barry, we are a full-on spoiler show. Any episode of Barry is game for discussion. However, we're doing things a tad different with these rewatch episodes. We will not be spoiling any future events or episodes of Barry during our discussion of this particular episode titled Make the Unsafe Choice. At the end of our discussion, though, we will have a spoiler section where we can discuss whatever the hell we want, okay? Because that's what we do. We will give you a heads up, so don't you go freaking out. Don't you worry. When we get to that point, we'll let you know. Spoiler coming in. Mills, hit us with the episode deets.
Yeah, he says he's not going to freak out like everyone thinks he's going to. And there's no need to freak out because this is episode 3 of season 1, titled Chapter 3, Make the Unsafe Choice. This originally aired Sunday, April 8th, 2018, with an estimated 595,000 viewers in the United States tuning in live to watch. This was directed by Bill Hader. This is the third episode of Barry that he's directed. So if you're keeping score at home, he's 3 for 3 so far. He's directed all of the first 3 episodes. This was written by Duffy Boudreau. This is his first written by credit on Barry. The short plot synopsis here is Barry misses an acting class to honor an obligation. The detectives try to piece together a murder puzzle. Sally makes a mistake during an audition and turns to Barry for comfort. The Chechens rejoice when a legendary assassin arrives.
And before we break down this episode, we're going to go kind of give you our overall thoughts on this particular episode. And remember here, no spoilers. For me, Mills, this was a little bit of a longer episode, right? And so, especially considering last week, and I thought they did a really good job kind of moving the story along. I really like the continuation and the further development of the LAPD storyline here. That it works really well with those two characters, agents that they're using there, detectives. So I thought that was good. I like, we got to see Barry try to do acting here, and it's that the scene where he's doesn't know what to do with his hands. It's just that storyline evolving even more. I really like that. And of course, we see our first little bit of romance here with Sally. So I thought that was good too. It just kind of, again, deepens the plot with some of our favorite characters so far. And ultimately, it introduces, more Fuchs, more Chechkins, and we get this new threat, new vehicle here, if you will, with the Bolivians. So I thought they did a really good job with this episode. A little bit longer of an episode here, certainly considering last week's episode, episode 2. But overall, Mills, I thought this was a good episode.
Yeah, it makes me feel a little bit old that this came out in 2018. You noticed it was a little bit longer. I think it did lag in places. I struggled to figure out exactly what they could have cut because it really feels like there were a few real standout scenes here, but then there were also a lot of shorter scenes that basically existed to move the plot along. Maybe there was a more delicate or intricate or just even more interesting way to move the plot there. Overall, probably a top-notch episode for Fuchs, for Sally, and even for Goran. I think the episode itself looked great, and I think that the Gene character, this isn't really a spoiler. Henry Winkler is on the show for now on this season, but Gene really kind of seems to have come into his own a little bit here, and he's a touch different than he was in the pilot, but it really feels like they're really kind of locking into what his character is now.
Yeah, and better than what he was in. It felt like that second episode they were still kind of undecided. Like Gene was transitioning; they didn't know, right? They went from this successful, actor with the Escalade in episode one to kind of this like very kind of like self-centered kind of
They had parts
aspect.
of it, they just weren't there yet.
They
Like
just weren't there yet,
there's still
right?
parts
So
of the pilot, but that's how it works with a lot of pilot scripts. You kind of write it and you don't know where it's going to go from there.
yeah, they're seasoning Cousineau, and I think that's a good point. And speaking of good points, Mills, it's time to make a choice, and I'll leave it up to you whether or not it's a safe choice.
I mean, the usual question for that is like, all right, is there a safe word? And Barry doesn't really need a safe word because he's found himself a nice little sniper's perch overlooking his target, Paco's house. While he waits for Paco to show himself, he reads Gene's book. Barry gets a call from Hank who tells him that he has to wait to kill Paco until a bullet arrives via DHL. Barry reluctantly agrees, and Fuchs questions Hank about the viability of the mailing a bullet concept. Goran joins Fuchs and Hank in the garage and excitedly tells Hank that Stovka is coming to replace Lucky, their assassin who was killed previously. This is great because Stovka is the best assassin in the history of Chechnya. He will be here within the hour, and that's bad news for Fuchs and Barry. DHL, like a little bit too much here or whatever. And I guess you have to put it into context because DHL is the biggest delivery company in Europe, and they are like, but Bolivia's in South America, right? I guess they use DHL there. But
Yeah,
I guess the point, because we see again, we're spoiling the whole episode, but Paco gets a call from his brother at the end. So it does appear that oh no, yeah, because remember when Hank tells Barry about it, like, oh, they will be delivered sometime between now and midnight,
yeah,
Bolivian time.
Bolivian
So
time.
they were delivering it to Bolivia. I guess
Yes,
that's where the raw cocaine comes from.
like straight from Bolivia. Yeah, and look, I love the sell here of this assassin and kind of Fuchs. You start to see Fuchs with how good he is at kind of scheming his way out of things, and you got to love that he's just here with the bike lock around the neck, and he's just kind of stuck with the blood and everything, and it looks
Bike lock
great.
runner is great. That's
Yeah,
that's way
that's
better than just normal handcuffs or something. That just adds a level to it.
and I like this development with Fuchs. You kind of start to see, okay, he's actually pretty good at being, kind of shady and working his way in and out of trouble, right? And so I thought that was kind of cool with this scene.
Well, there was so much that was fun. I especially loved that, just like how giddy Hank and Goran got when Stovka's coming. I mean, that was like telling, like, I don't know, 14-year-old me, you're gonna go meet Derek Jeter or something like that. They were like, oh my god! Like, you feel like they probably have like their favorite hits he ever did or something like that. Just did you like how they played it, like almost like childlike,
Oh,
adoration of this hitman?
absolutely. I mean, it was basically like a celebrity, and they sold him as this mythical godlike thing, right? And I thought it was really cool, and see how excited they are. Yeah, it's like, dude, yes. Like, it was exactly like you're going to see your favorite, meet your favorite sports hero at 12.
Yeah, they just I really enjoyed the way they played it, kind of really broad and just like genuinely excited. I thought that whole part was great. And you also have to give a shout out to Gene's book. We're hearing, I don't know if Barry's listening to an audiobook. I think we're just getting Gene narrating while Barry reads. But one of the lines is, the woman acts as if she's had a climax with the incompetent lover. And Gene wrote the book, and you know what they tell writers? Write what you know about.
Ah, Gene. Yes, give me more of the voiceover to Gene's book. Big fan of that.
Yeah, you know what? More of that.
I remember once Patrick Swayze, a true friend, until we had a falling out and he had it written into his will that I was barred from his funeral.
But I love this Gene is what I'll say, and just hilarious, dude. One of those things where it was just not necessarily supposed to be. It's just very funny the way it was done here with the voiceover.
Yeah. Any thoughts on the mailing the bullet concept? Like, do you like this? Do you think it would be intimidating? Like, would you know if you got a bullet in the mail? Like, would you understand what it meant?
I don't know. I mean, it would be weird as shit. It would definitely weird you out. I just think it works so well here because they're really trying to highlight kind of Hank as this like happy-go-lucky guy that's also like a criminal, but kind of a joke. And, and then Barry, like this professional hitman. You would never waste the time to do that and tease somebody with a kill. You would just go and kill them. So you have these two conflicting things. And I think it just adds a level of humor again to a really, really, really dark concept.
Yes, 100% on that. I think the whole thing was pretty great. Did you think the DHL thing was a bit much? Like the fact that Hank goes out of his way to even like www.dhl.com. Like, do you think that was actually like a paid product placement, or they just thought it was funny? Like, any thoughts? Because it was just very blatant. Like DHL is there through the whole episode, although I don't think we actually ever see a truck or not. So that leads me to believe they didn't get paid for this. But why would they like go as far as to give out the website without getting paid for it?
I want them to have gotten paid for this because it would be just like a great way of doing it. But honestly, dude, my money's on the fact that I think they just thought it was really funny just to do that. And again, as they kind of play with this character here, I think they just thought it was fun. And guess what? It was.
That's so great. So Fuchs figures out, right? All right, like this is bad for him and Barry. And so he asked, Goran and Hank, like,
what does this mean for me and Barry?
We'll probably kill you, but I haven't checked with Goran yet.
Like that just broke me because Goran kind of looks at it like, and that's just Hank doing his kind of like just like blatantly honest, oblivious thing. It's kind of like Drax from the Guardians of the Galaxy, like he doesn't quite understand like subtlety or sarcasm where he takes everything literally. I really
it just his lack of being able to read social cues and it's just this combination of Goran and Hank is awesome, dude. Like give it to us more. And the Hank kind of like overstepping on the boss, but then the boss has like this lovable way of telling him he's messing up, and it's a great combo.
Yeah, you usually wouldn't say that about a mobster and it's kind of like a head lieutenant or whatever, but they're kind of adorable.
You ship them a little bit, don't you? Even just like just like what they are, like the cap, the head lieutenant and the boss. So
yeah, not even in like they have to bag way, like just in an emotionally healthy way. Like they seem to have a good a good solid like you're number one. That's tough. That's like Tony and Silvio in The Sopranos or whatever. It's tough. Like
it's hard to be
like the
man.
Yeah, and I think that's what Hank's trying to step up to. But kind of speaking of just cute and whatnot, in the next scene we see Sally, and she's playing the spring princess at a girl's birthday party. Very young girl, probably 9-10 years old, what have you. And then she gets a call from her almost agent about an audition this afternoon. It's for the TV version of We Bought a Zoo, and she's up for the part of a mother in an episode. And they asked for her by name. Sally agrees to do the audition and hangs up the phone to deal with the birthday girl who she had been ignoring, who just fell over because she spun around 25 times.
I love that you hear them counting in the background. And just how great is this right off the bat? It's your almost agent. I mean, this is so Sally, right? I mean, she has an almost agent. I mean, that's just and his lack of care and just, clearly he
hip pocketed her, dude. He hip pocketed her.
He hip pocketed her. Yeah.
Yeah, and just the fact that when Sally turns around and hangs up the phone, and she says, "Oh shit!" Like, and she drops her accent, and then she apologizes to the kid with her accent on. Do you think she was apologizing, like saying "Oh shit," because the girl spun around 25 times and fell over, or because she broke character?
Really good question. I'm going with she broke character, knowing Sally.
I think it is too, given how we see Sally play out. I think she's so into her performance that she wouldn't even care about the kid.
And just again, a little bit with kind of pointing out the life of a trying to be make it actor in Los Angeles, right? During the day, you're doing a gig where you're working a princess theme at a birthday party for toddlers. And and then
they were like 8 to 10, like they weren't not quite toddlers, but definitely very young, like
for kids,
first to fourth graders. I don't really know how to. We don't look at young girls here, so I'm just having to make a generalization.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing it for little kids, right? Working a birthday party princess thing, and then you're going to an audition for a millennial girl. And so I think they just the show does a good job of kind of pointing out the life of a struggling actor.
Yeah, and I did enjoy her almost agent. Like he had some great lines about like how he's like, "Oh, you're gonna go do it? Like, do you read the script? No." And then just like the idea that they're doing not only a TV movie or a TV show about the We Bought a Zoo joint, but now it's like you're replacing Matt Damon's character with like a millennial girl. That's fine, but that does seem to be like a lot of when people are pitching stuff. It's like, well, what about if we did the thing that they did before, but it's like a different person?
Yeah, there's a lack of creativity.
Yeah, that's not quite Banyan, right? It's not gold, Jerry. It's not gold.
It's not gold. It's not gold, but it is happening and it is a trend. Next scene, we see Barry still in the sniper's nest and he's running out of patience. Paco is presenting himself as an easy target, but Barry can't pull the trigger because the bullet hasn't arrived yet. Barry gambles that the bullet won't come for a while when he abandons his post to attend acting class.
Just great. Shout out the actor who played Paco here. Just the way he comes out and like present like just stretching and getting the paper and smoking a cigarette, like and just being like the easiest target you've ever seen for Barry to kill. I just thought it was a nice subtle bit of kind of physical comedy. Again, no dialogue for it or anything. Just don't look down at your phone at that point. Shout out the actor who played Paco.
And you gotta like it, and as he's stretching, he's got the gut hanging. It just just looking like, oh, this would be so easy to take this guy out here.
It reminded me, a little bit of Dr. Gonzo action going on there. I think that was good. And John, I think he drove. It was definitely a Pontiac. I couldn't tell if it was a Thunderbird or a Firebird. I think it was a Firebird, maybe a Firehawk. I've not paid attention. I don't even think they make Pontiacs anymore. So again,
it might have been a Sunfire.
No, it wasn't a Sunfire.
Sunfire
Sure
was okay.
Pretty sure Sunfire was smaller than that.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure it was whatever the like the old Firebird. It was the like they crossed the Firebird and the Trans Am. I think at one point that Pontiac was doing some shit. But again, we've seen just a couple of cars in this show so far, and they've all been American, down to a Taurus wagon, an Escalade. Here we get a Pontiac. So shout out keeping it American. The next scene. We're back at Goran's garage, but there's no cars in there. But there is a Stovka because he has arrived and the Chechens are in full-on fanboy mode. They're taking pictures, not really selfies as much as like actual group pictures. They're very excited. And after the pictures, Goran kind of shoos everyone else away, except Fuchs because he's still locked up there via the bike lock. In Russian, Goran tells Stovka that he's very happy to see him, and when Barry returns, he's to kill both Barry and Fuchs. He also makes a couple of descriptions like pop, pop while he's doing it, so it's pretty obvious what he's doing. And as he leaves, Goran gives Stovka a rifle. He heads back inside. Fuchs kind of knows the deal here, so he's worried. So he tries to strike up a conversation with Stovka, but Stovka seems very, very depressed. And dude, when they talked about Stovka that way, were you just like, what was your just reaction to see the look of this guy who's like this revered assassin?
It was hilarious, dude. I could not. I was in love with this. He's literally sitting there, just this old, kind of decrepit, certainly down and depressed old man. That just it was not the way they hyped it and the legend. I mean, imagine God, Batman showing up in a and like at 90 in a wheelchair and with like a oxygen tank.
You're expecting like a Schwarzenegger-esque character or something, dude. Like at least like Antonio Banderas and Assassins maybe or something like.
Yeah, shout out to
long hair, cool, like
yes, somebody with some energy, some oomph. I mean, it was a whole lot of nothing there. So I thought this was great, dude. And again, the big contrast, right? We thought it was going to be one thing. They hit us with this. And it worked, man. It was very funny. And of course, they're taking selfies and stuff. I mean, just, this perfect thing for Hank, right? I mean, Hank's trying to get the perfect shot. I mean, this is great.
One better joke probably would have been right after he kicks him out, then Goran like makes him take a selfie with him. That would have been like one kind of nice button on that scene. I don't mean to give notes. I know they're very good on the show, but shout out set design because this looked like exactly what you would expect kind of a garage to look like, where they actually maybe park a car in there or a little bit of torture once in a while. There's just like random exercise stuff and kids' toys in the background. But if you look, there's actually in the background this kind of superhero cardboard cutout like you would have seen at like a Blockbuster or something back in the day. And it's fucking like a superhero character, but with Goran's head on it. And it says something in another language. It's like if you don't pay attention to it, it's like kind of like, like a generic Superman, but it has his head on it. It's absolutely amazing, and I would just love to know what it says and how that came about or whatever. So again, there's a lot of stuff going on, high-end shows like this. So pay attention in the background. There's a lot of those little Easter eggs and whatnot.
Good find, Magnum Mills. We appreciate that. From there, we go over to LAPD, where Loach tells Janice Moss that Ryan Madison was having an affair with Goran Pazar's wife, which establishes a motive for his murder. Janice quickly determines that whoever killed the Chechkins is probably someone from either the gym or the acting class. Dude, how great is Detective Loach trying to beat around the bush a little bit and give the sexual innuendo that Madison was sleeping with Pazar's wife. I mean, this exchange between Moss and I touched on it in my opening comments, but the Moss and Loach are just, I love this pair, dude. I love this pair.
And it turns out that Romeo Madison was training Goran Pazar's wife. Training.
Oh, shit.
I mean, Abbott and Costello, they are not probably, but I mean, they play this perfectly. Like, Loach doesn't get a lot of screen time, and we only really know from like the whole like thing of the previous episode about the bet about his wife divorcing him. So it's obvious he's kind of a sad sack guy.
Yep.
In just the way he's presented, like his wrinkled suit, his tie is not quite right, like his hair, everything is just off a touch. Yeah, it's perfect. Disheveled, and just disheveled and pathetic in wardrobe, costuming, makeup, everyone just absolutely nailed that. And the dude does it too. Like, you could get the idea that he's practiced this training joke like in the bathroom in front of the mirror, because he is going to this is going to be the thing that everyone's like, oh, he gets a good laugh, and that's where he starts. And it's like, oh, dude, like he has to say the punchline twice, and he's just oh yeah.
You know what he is, Magnum Mills? He's basically the funny version of Bruce Willis's character in The Last Boy Scout. Living in the car, drunk, waking up to squirrels freaking.
Bruce Willis is the funny version of Bruce Willis's character in that movie. Loach is because that's it's like laughing at you or laughing with you. You're laughing with Bruce Willis's character. You're laughing at
that's Loach. Probably true. It's like the sadder, I guess, like the PG version, I guess, is what I would say.
Yeah, and one of those movies is Halle Berry, the other one doesn't. So, although, yeah, Loach, get back with your ex-wife, dude. That's your best bet.
So, dude, shout out Last Boy Scout. But this is the Barry podcast. We are going to stay on track here. And yeah, I mean, not much here. I did like the fact that, as big of a joke as the LAPD is, there was a little bit of actual police work done here. They broke out the whiteboard and wrote it out and quickly made the determination. I mean, there was a little detective sleuthing going around here. So that was nice to see, because, LAPD has been portrayed as pretty lackadaisical and a joke so far. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of those things where Janice obviously knows her shit, and it's kind of one of those like fish out of water where you have the smart person surrounded by the incompetent people or whatever. But good whiteboarding. I'm surprised that she was able to get all that done. Like, they don't have a squad formed yet. There's no squad name. There's no squad logo. I think you need to work on those things. But other than that, that brings us to the acting class, where the students are working through some exercises regarding their private spaces. And it's not the personal space. That's Rick and Morty, where dude rips the skin off. Also very funny. But this is something Barry's struggling with. He can't do this exercise. He just can't picture anything. Gene has the class try to help him out, but as they're yelling out suggestions, Loach and Janice show up to question everyone about Ryan's murder. Gene offers to let them use his office to ask their questions. And Jamie G, everyone out there wants to know, what emotion do you associate with soup?
Definitely not thirst, but I do love that answer by Barry.
I mean, I guess I'm thinking like back in the day, snowboarding and stuff like that. I do remember there were people like who would bring a thermos of chicken noodle soup.
Yeah,
and you drink like a little bit, basically drink the soup on the chairlift at a certain point
to
stay warm. But that's like
that wasn't thirst, that was more warmth, I guess. Which I
little column A, little column B, probably.
Yeah, I mean, look, man, this scene was, and again, I touched on this during my opening comments too. Getting scenes where Barry is acting, is becoming or attempting to act or doing whatever, failing miserably. is becoming one of my favorite things about this show. And this is just so good as dude, when he starts, when Gene starts getting on Barry and he doesn't know what to do with his hands or in his pocket, they're out. He's trying to just Hader nails kind of this discomfort that Barry must be feeling right now. And not to mention that the dialogue here is hilarious.
Wait, you just brought that up though, because I think it's interesting. Like multiple times during the scene, Gene's like, hands in your pockets, hands out of your pocket. And he seems to be mad at him each time. Do you think Gene was deliberately fucking with him? Or do you think the shows kind of show that like Gene kind of just lives in the moment? He's not really like thinking too much about his advice. Like he just kind of says whatever pops into his head.
I think Gene 100% lives in the moment. And I think the show's trying to, they have something with making Gene have these magical moments where he brings out somebody's true acting ability. And maybe it's whimsical and it's unconventional for sure. But I think they know they have something there and they're trying to show it, while also developing, his character outside of the stage.
And in a little bit different way than they did in the first 2 episodes too here. So
100%.
I think, they're continuing to try to kind of, dial into these characters, which is very common for a show early in its run. You start out with a pilot, you have kind of broad, maybe you have some scripts, but once the actors start doing the job and you start seeing things, you can kind of be like, all right, this is going to work better than that or whatever. So I think that they are really kind of dialing into, the Gene character very well here, but you are not wrong. And dude, Nick, like, is Nick kind of the worst when he's doing his thing? And how did his sister Styles get in there?
No one, inquiring minds do want to know.
That was kind of self-aware of him. I think like if he meant to do it as a joke, it was funny. But if he just like,
I think he was literally like, I think it was literally like a thing where
living in the moment, like it was his real, like he was just doing his honest truth or whatever.
And it's great too because you can tell when Gene is feeling somebody's acting and when Gene is hating somebody's acting, and Gene was absolutely hating Nick's acting here, but then when Sally's up there, Gene's into it, man. And he's he's right in there and he's coaching and he's doing all the stuff he's supposed to do. So it's just funny with the way they develop Gene. But yes, Nick is kind of the worst.
Oh, and it's funny too because everyone else is supposedly, do their personal space thing, but Sally is just blatantly like rehearsing for the scene she is going to do later. And like you said, Gene just goes with it, but the dialogue exchange is just...
My son is nervous because we've arrived at the 8 pit.
Tell me, Sally, what's in the 8 pit?
Apes.
And the whole soup exchange was just great. I mean, Jamie G, to be honest, you knew that Barry Berkman's favorite soup would be just broth, right?
It had to be, right? I mean, nothing with, come on, dude.
Like, can you get blander than chicken noodle soup? Chicken broth.
Chicken broth. Like, like would have been shocking if he would have said something like totally exotic. Like that would have blown my mind. But yeah, when I picture Barry, I picture like bland, like olive color shirt, nothing stands out, and drinking bland broth. Like that's just quintessential Barry.
Oh, see, drinking bland broth, possible title of the episode.
From that incredible scene, we're back in Goran's garage where Fuchs is still trying to talk to Stofka. He tries to regale him with stories of America and women, but nothing seems to make an impact here. Stofka bears his soul to Fuchs, telling him that his wife and child left him and that he can never be free as long as he's working for these Chechen criminals. He takes what he sees as his only way out and commits suicide with the rifle Goran gave him. Goran comes running into the garage after he hears the gunshot and asks Fuchs, "What did you do?"
Just, did you break a testicle laughing when Fuchs asked Stofka how old he was? And Stofka's like, 45. I mean, dude looks like what, 70?
Dude, I was gonna say 80s. Yeah, like late 70s, early 80s.
Shout out the actor. I'm not, not trying to age discriminate or anything. Because who knows? Maybe he's a younger dude made up to look older or whatever. But my feeling was he was supposed to look at least 70, 75.
Easy, dude. Like I wouldn't have been shocked if he would have said 87, nor would I have been shocked if he said 77. Like, I mean, he could have been anywhere in that range. 45 was not what I thought at all. And it was perfect too, because you get the close-up of him and then it goes back and he's like 45. I mean, just great work here by Hader from a directing standpoint. And yeah, this was a little piece here that definitely stood out for me through in this episode. I mean, just hilarious.
Yeah, and Steven wrote with like a top 10, like, Jesus Christ. Like, after he just absolutely perfect. And the best part is, like, Fuchs has entered the state where of just, bargaining, right? So he starts out with, he's going to take Stoker out. They're going to have a good time. There's all these California girls. Then it becomes a couple of girls in Cleveland. And then after Stoker tells him he's 45, he's like, well, there's this one gal. She is Cherokee, though, but yeah, like Fuchs just keeps like lowering the bar a little bit. And I just thought the entire, again, not a lot to this scene, but this is where I think the episode really sung, was in some of these shorter scenes that were just again, I think that's just an overall fantastic scene. And speaking of kind of a different type of scene where we get a bunch of short cuts, Janice begins interviewing the acting class in Gene's office. The students are kind of all over the place. They shoot it a little bit like the confessionals in The Office, where everybody's in the same background and they keep doing the quick cuts back and forth. In the acting, students are kind of crazy, which makes Barry seem kind of normal by comparison. After his interview, Barry talks to Gene about his failure in the earlier exercise. And Gene tells him that he's going to play Blake in the Glengarry Glen Ross. As Gene leaves, Sally walks up and asks Barry for a ride to her audition, and Barry somewhat reluctantly agrees. Gene swings by his office and attempts to flirt with Janice, promising that he will call her. Jamie G, where did that, any thoughts on Gene's game?
Oh, dude, I give Gene a little bit of credit here too, because she basically just shot him down, and he just plays it cool. Oh, I run this. Boom, boom, taps the wall twice as he walks out. I'll call you. I gotta give Gene credit here, dude. He did not hesitate after getting that shot down. I think Janice was like, who the fuck are you supposed to be? I mean,
I think she literally said, what the fuck? At one point,
she basically just ripped him open. I mean, just epic shot down, and he plays it cool as shit. Oh, me? I run this. I'll call you. I love the slap on the door twice as he's walking. That is boss, dude. That's baller right there.
I wonder if that's a little Fonz callback. Used to do the jukebox tap or whatever. Maybe a touch of that in there, because that does add a little bit of layer to it when you remember that Henry Winkler was the Fonz. He was if you're one of the young folks, he was the thirst trap dude back in the day. He had his leather jacket and his hair, and it was just a given. He looked and
he was
people fell in love.
Yeah, he was before the Beatles, there was the Outsiders. He was that guy, I mean, that was
everybody loved Fonz. He'd be oh, parents don't want you dating anybody else, and they'd be Fonz. All right, we can extend your curfew by a couple hours.
He's Fonz, dude. And look, I like the quick rapid fire one with the actors here. One thing to note was, well, two things. One, you see Barry, being cool, calm, collected, answering every question without hesitation. You see Nick, the worst, right? He's slamming water. I like that little, contrast there. But Antonio was hilarious here. I could not stop thinking about our guy, our favorite, Magnum Mills, who loves himself some Coors Light specifically. He is the protector of mountains. And this scene with Antonio with the Coors was absolutely hilarious. And there he has one right there, drinking for you if you're not watching us, but listening. Maybe you can hear those sweet, sweet sounds, Coors Light, going down his throat.
Again, smooth, dulcet tones. That's been focus group tested. Just like, Coors Gym. I mean, why would you call it Curves Gym? Why would you not just call it Coors Gym? And then you have a Coors sign outside to make sure it's on so that people know you have ice cold Coors.
Yeah, and dude, how awesome would it be to go to the gym with a bunch of dudes who just drink beer, and after they do a little workout, or they're drinking during the workout, and then it just turns into a bar.
I have not drank.
There's going to be a market for this.
College, I drank in the weight room. I have gone to a gym drunk, like an LA Fitness or whatever, in my adult, but I've not drank at the joint.
I haven't either, but you can make a case, dude. You go out dancing, you're not, you're.
I mean, you do that. You have a little acorn meat. You want to get your pump on, dude.
Yeah, dude. You get a little pump. I mean, you're doing cardio while you're drinking, right? If you're going out dancing or doing something like that, so I think you can make the case.
That's what life is about, man. Life is about taking a risk, making the unsafe choice, and shout out the Sasha line was great too. When they're asking what her job was, and I liked how they some people said actor and some people said their day job, and then she says, "Oh, I was in a web series." Well, it really wasn't a web series; it was a YouTube video, but it's up to 249 views. Sasha, I feel your pain, girl.
Yes. We're right, that dude. That was great for us too. I thought that was great. And fuck, man.
What about what Gene tells Barry? I mean, we kind of have to, just roll the clip.
I once auditioned for the guy that robbed the house on Full House. And I carried a loaded Beretta with me into the audition, just to feel the weight of it.
Did you get the part?
Oh, they freaked out.
And here we get the payoff with Sally talking about her agent hip pocketing her. And that's a real term in Hollywood. It basically describes a relationship between an agent and an actor where the agent agrees to send the actor out for opportunities without signing a formal contract until they book one. And shout out to Glengarry Glenn Ross, that Blake role that Gene is talking about. That's the very famous speech that Alec Baldwin makes in the movie version. Always be closing, ABC, that he gives to the salesman. It's right up there with the clips from Wall Street or whatever, if you're ever in finance or whatever. Like, the always be closing speech is something that gets played constantly at retreats and, all team building
Corporate
exercises,
America
all that
at
kind of
large.
thing.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Any kind of team building, you're seeing it there.
And Alec Baldwin, smooth as shit in that.
Yes, he is. We're back at Goran's garage. Hank and some henchmen remove Stofka's body, and we see Goran sits next to Fuchs and ponders his next move. Stofka's death has shaken him to the core, and he can't tell his family. Fuchs, sensing an opening here, begins going to work on Goran, telling him that he's impressed that he's so open about his feelings. Is Fuchs not like the ultimate like manipulator / like mentally abusive verb like person you can ever meet? Like he is very good at this.
Absolutely. Like, it's one of those dudes, like, when they tell you, like, don't talk to this dude, like, in the movies, like, and he even brings it up when he does that. He has the Hannibal Lecter reference, like, but he kind of is. And I mean, this is Fuchs, man. Like, Back to the Wall, I think he's one of those dudes who's just at his most dangerous at that point. And I also want to say that if we had started this podcast in season 1, I would have totally been cool if it was called Goran's Garage. Like, I feel like we almost need a Goran's Garage segment. I don't know how or why. Maybe it's just to talk about the random tourist wagons and whatnot on the show, but I just like Goran's Garage. I think it sounds cool.
Goran's Garage is a great phonetically it works, but I love it. Magnum Mills. Maybe we do a spinoff one day. Goran's Garage, that hanging with Hank, dude, and Goran's Garage. I definitely like it.
Another case of, we've kind of seen this with all the characters in the show, but even Goran seems kind of fucked up by his family, his parents, and Fuchs is smart enough to prey on that the same way he did with Barry. So both a theme with the show and with Fuchs.
Mills, do you think he's talking about his actual like family, like his mom and his dad, or do you think he's talking about the criminal family back home in Chechnya?
I think that's the point, that it's kind of ambiguous, just like it would be on The Sopranos or something. And probably both, because it's different. Like, how can you win with both? Because, sometimes it is a win-lose proposition where you do something that helps one family, but it hurts the other, or at least demeans you in their eyes or something like that. So you can get one idea, I mean, I think that's the idea, right? He is the Chechen Tony Soprano, right? Even down to kind of the way, like, the wardrobe and the way he kind of acts and carries himself or whatever. I think that's what they're going for. And, shout out the actor playing him and everything. But I think Goran's pulling it off, dude. I'm very interested what he has to do next. But what we actually see next is that Barry brings Sally to her audition, and they run lines in the lobby until Sally's called in to start the audition. Barry agrees to wait for her. Sally quickly discovers that her former co-star Liv is who requested her by name, because Liv is the star of this show. She's the millennial who bought the zoo. Sally can't wrap her mind around the fact that she's supposed to be a random millennial mother, while Liv is the millennial lead, and Sally so upset that she blows the audition. Jamie G, we don't get a lot of context or backstory, but do you think Liv was legitimately trying to like give her friend a shot, or do you think this was like she was setting her up to fail?
I think she, you know what? Honestly, man, I think that she was a little bit of both. She wanted to, more than anything, show Sally, who was the lead back in the day with the Boston Bombers that they did. I think she wanted to show her that she is now the lead, and she's made it, and she was gorgeous and had the body and everything and dressed the part. I think she wanted that, but at the same time, I think she was trying to throw a little bit of a bone because I think she would have enjoyed being in the lead and having Sally kind of on set in her shadow. So I think it was pretty, there was definitely some ill intent there, but I think she also wanted Sally, to get back to work.
Yeah, you kind of split the difference quite expertly there. Very politician well of you. I mean, more like I'd be like, look at me, I am the star now, right? I actually think she was trying to throw him out because it was just a 1-episode gig. It wasn't like it to be a co-star or something like that. This was really just a one-shot. She had no reason to lie for her. I mean, maybe there is a little bit of a thing where maybe when they filmed her show, like Sally talks about, she lost weight or whatever, that maybe she felt inferior, and now on a subtle level she wanted to show like, look at me, I'm hot now and I'm good or whatever, but she still kind of wanted to do right by her. So, but we do see that this definitely triggers some shit in Sally that we'll kind of see, throughout the episode here. And Jamie G, I hate to put you on the spot. Are you taking this exchange in your quote of the episode?
I'm not taking this exchange.
Okay, cool. So, and there's also the exchange here that is something that Barry does so well when we find out how Liv and Sally knew each other. It's because they were on this other show. The director asks, so what was the show? And Sally says,
Oh, you never heard of it. It never aired.
It was really good. We just got a little unlucky with the timing of some world events.
Oh, that's too bad. What was it called?
Bonnie and the Boston Bombers.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, it was tragic. Both things, obviously. And the fucked up part of that is, when Sally said that she actually meant the fucked up thing was her show was canceled because of the name. And then she had to chime in quickly to cover herself and be like, oh yeah, the actual Boston, the marathon bombing was also bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it just, again, highlights kind of Sally's just self-centeredness and just the whole world.
Yeah, Sarah Goldberg just slaying it there. Just like this episode is a real showcase for her. I think she really gets to kind of spread her wings in a way she wasn't able to as much in the first couple episodes.
And speaking of spreading wings, Fuchs is making serious progress with Goran here because he has moved from the garage to the dining table. However, he is still restrained with that bike lock. Goran wants what the Bolivians have, and Fuchs tells him to go after their assets and stop it with the theatrics. At that moment, Hank walks in bragging that DHL had just delivered the bullet. Goran sends Hank away, and Hank leaves to go text Barry that the bullet has arrived. Fuchs suggests that Goran takes the Bolivian stash house. Then, when their leader Cristobal shows up, you kill him. Goran asks if Barry can do this, and Fuchs asks Goran to remove the bike lock, as he's not even cutting the steak anymore, Mills. He's just nibbling on it. How great is Fuchs here? Stephen Root trying to reach the line and really working this lock, dude. I mean, this is just, a little bit of physical acting here that's just hilarious.
Oh, absolutely. Just brilliantly played. And even kind of the visual of someone just trying to like rip at the meat raw with their teeth, kind of like emphasizes the fact that he's got a little animalistic. He's doing whatever it takes to survive here. And also shout out the exchange. No offense to anybody, which is what we say before we offend people. But Fuchs asks, Bolivians, aren't they those short motherfuckers? And Goran says, statistically, one of the shortest nations on the earth, but they're very mean. And Fuchs replies, don't sell yourself short, big guy. I mean, you were about to take my teeth out earlier. You're a goofball too. For the record, the tallest nation in the world when you average male and female together is the Netherlands, with an average human height of 72.36 inches. The shortest nation is Indonesia, which checks in at 62.2 inches. Bolivia, for the record, is the second shortest at 62.9 inches. So close.
We appreciate that background. The more you know. And, look, dude, it's just remarkable the moves Fuchs has made here, right? He went from waiting for the most feared hitman in all of Chechnya to come to literally kill him. to then watching him, you know, the hitman kill himself, to then working over Goran, to be at the dining room table smoking cigars, eating a steak dinner with having a nice cup of red wine here. I mean, you got to hand it to Fuchs. He's really changing his situation, right?
I mean, he started from the bottom. Now he's here. It's hard to say it any other way. And I have one more question before we move on. Like, because you see how quickly Goran dismisses Hank after the bullet thing. Do you think that was because he wanted to impress Fuchs, or because like this was really Hank's idea with the bullet and Hank was just trying to play it off like it was Goran's?
What's funny is I really think it was Hank's deal, because earlier in the episode you hear Hank tell Barry, this is like Goran's thing. He's been talking about,
but he's so passionate about it, and Hank is so kind of like monotone otherwise. The fact that he gets so passionate about it leads me to
it's a Hank thing, and it definitely feels like a Hank thing. Even just a couple episodes in here, it just kind of feels like something Hank would do. And Goran just quickly just rolls his eyes and says, "Let the grown-ups talk." So that was a damning series of events for Hank there.
Yeah, be
He's
another
so
good,
proud of it.
If we started in season 1 again, another good alternate title for the podcast. It's a Hank thing. I really would be good with that.
Well, who's not good is Sally, because we see her come down from her audition and she's visibly upset. Sally asks Barry to go do something, but Barry can't because he has to go take care of Paco. As they leave, we see Vasha taking pictures of the two. Dude, how much do you think that lens costs for Vasha, bro? That's got to be like a $12,000 like extension. Like, that thing is massive. You could take pictures of the shit. We could freaking.
It's a telescope. It's a
we could
technically. I am 99% positive that's not a real lens. Like, you would get a telescopic lens, like a one that big wouldn't look like it. I think it's just done for comical purposes. But dude, when he's holding it up, if you watch the chick in the background kind of like giving him this weird look, and then he puts it down and he kind of sees her and he tries to hide it, that is the subtle comedy that this show is so good at, and why it merits rewatching. Is like, pay attention to every part of the frame. That's again a mark of a good show. Very well, directed, lit. Like, there's so many things going on. Even some of the scenes, like the quiet, like the slow zooms and everything. I really think Barry is kind of underrated for how good looking it is of a show, in the subtle jokes you get with that.
Yeah, and let's just give credit to Hader, right? I mean, 3 episodes in, he's directed all 3, and they've been winners, dude. Like, he's done some cool shit here the first 3 episodes from a directorial standpoint, and he did not disappoint in this episode at all.
No, not at all. And you have to give out to the one major quote in the episode when Sally comes down and she's kind of in tears, and Barry's kind of wondering what's up, and Sally goes,
"Oh yeah, I had to cry for the scene, so."
Mom and Sue cries?
My son fell in an 8 pit, Barry.
Just the best combination of Sally, like, all of a sudden going from sad to indignant and like kind of slipping into character for a second when she says "my son." I think that does kind of, it's both funny and gives us an indication of like, she actually can be a really good actress when she's kind of locked onto it.
Yeah, you're starting to get the sense that she clearly is the best one in that acting class, right? I mean, you're like, she's the one that's got the actual shot here, is what you're kind of starting to get the sense of, at least a couple episodes in for me.
Yeah, it's like good news, bad news. She seems to be the most talented, but also she's kind of narcissistic about it. So we'll talk about that a little bit in a minute when we get to the conversation he has with Barry on the phone. But before then, Barry has to head back to Paco's to wait for an opportunity to finish the job. Hank calls to ask if the job is done because the bullet has been delivered, but Barry tells him that he has to wait. Right as he's on the phone with Hank, Barry gets a call from Sally on the other line. Remember call waiting? She distracts him long enough that he misses his opportunity to kill Paco when he arrives at home. Sally begs Barry to come and see her, telling him that she doesn't want to be alone. Barry eventually relents and tells her that he'll be there in a half hour. And I think this is the part that kind of, I wouldn't say turned me against Sally a little bit, but when she's on the phone here, she is just like mad at everybody but herself a little bit. It does seem, like, and she's kind of just talking shit about this chick who I'm pretty sure just tried to help her get a job or whatever. Shout out the line, she was number 5 on the fucking call sheet. Like, she is just angry, and I don't know if she wears Barry down or whatever, but again, good physical comedy from Paco when Barry misses the shot. Anything else from you on this scene?
No, I mean, look, I think Sally, you're starting to see that she's raging a little bit. She's had a chance to think about this, and now she's convinced herself that this was just a big ploy to just embarrass her. And you can kind of start to see a little bit of that anger and rage coming out. Another turn with this, and we talked about it earlier. It's not just Fuchs, it's not just Barry. All these characters, whether it's Jean or Sally or any of the other, what appear to be main characters, you're starting to see more development out of them, and that's an awesome, thing.
And I do want to shout out 2018, like headphone microphone technology, because when Sally asked Barry if he thinks that she's a good actress, and Barry calls her one of the best actresses that he's ever seen, I'd literally heard her panties drop through Barry's little, headphone, cell phone, microphone. So shout out whoever was making that.
Barry, at this point, I think he heard him too, because he sneaks into Paco's house through a window just as Paco gets a call from his brother about the bullet arriving. Paco hears Barry and jets into the backyard. Barry manages to subdue him and chokes him to death as the neighbors continue to have a party next door. We talked about good physical comedy. Man, this is about as good as it gets. The scene where Paco turns around after hearing the floorboard squeak, and you see Barry's just kind of like you caught him, and then he's got to quietly chase him through that. It was this
Tom and Jerry. It was Tom and Jerry is kind of what it
Yes.
felt like a little bit. And right as Paco's about to get the neighbors to see him or whatever, Barry gets him down and then kind of, locks him up a little Krav Maga or whatever, and then chokes him out. Not a lot to that scene, but I do want to point out that Barry got really careless here. You see him, he comes in that window, there's no gloves, and this is a show that's pretty careful about things, so that has to be deliberate. I do you think this is the show trying to illustrate that Barry is A, bad at improvising, or B, just so capped up about Sally that it kind of caused him to lose his mind and forego his usual rules?
Yeah, and I think he's also super frustrated, right? I mean, he wanted to take care of this in the morning, and he had to deal with this bullet thing. All day he's been kind of pulled towards the life he wants, which is acting, which is Sally, which is the class. And he hasn't been able to do it because he still has to deal with this job. I think he's just at a point where wherever he has to do to end it quick, he wants to end it quick and go to the life that he wants. And I think the show does a great job kind of showing that as well.
With Paco taken care of, Barry speeds to Sally's apartment while he's still on the phone with her. Hank calls on the other line. Barry quickly tells him that the job is done. Release Fuchs. Literally, that's all he says. Switch right back to the other line. Barry arrives, and Sally asks if he thinks that she's going to be a star. When Barry says yes, she immediately moves in for a kiss, and Barry eventually rolls with it. Next thing you know, Barry and Sally are in a grocery store shopping for soup and gum. We cut to Barry lying awake in bed next to Sally, muttering Paco's last words, which were in Spanish. Sally translates for him. Paco was saying, "You don't have to do this." Barry stares up at the ceiling and says, "I guess not." And end credits.
Decent amount to unpack here. Let's just start with Sally, right? I mean, she's literally a mile a minute on the phone. You're not getting a word in whether you want to. And, Barry's able to kind of click over, click back. She's still going. And what I love here is this is done so right, because she's just ripping right now, dude. I mean, a mile a minute, just blah, 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 blah. And you cut away and it's one thing. All he says is the job is done, release Fuchs, cuts back, and we get herpes, Barry. It lasts forever. Herpes lasts forever. Goes right into that, dude. I mean,
excellent cut. Excellent smash cut right there.
Yeah, I mean,
100%.
That was great. And then to the point where she's literally waiting outside, and she cuts in from her own shit to be like, "You just passed my house." And as you see the car flying by, and then he puts it in reverse. So, a lot here with Sally, and she's out there just drinking wine, just literally waiting for him. In a way, it's psychotic, but in another way, it's kind of cute and endearing. But I don't know what to think about it. But
70 psychotic, 30 cute and endearing. That's what I would put it.
Yeah, that's probably
on a percentage scale.
That's probably a fair ratio. Anything else on Sally before we move on to the other kind of big thing here, and that's what happens after Barry gets there?
Well, I mean, we have I mean, are you surprised at all that they banged? It seems like they were setting that up last episode when Sally kind of threw it out there for Barry, like, "Oh, we shouldn't do this." And Barry was like, "Oh, what are you talking about?" And she kind of like got taken aback a little bit.
I would have been fine if they decided to kind of build that up. I wouldn't go full like, Pam and like in freaking The Office or anything, but I would probably have built that up maybe another episode before you let them just full bang. But I'm happy they banged. Dude, I ship Barry and Sally. I like this couple. I mean, it adds a little bit of something soft and a little bit of love to a show that's just incredibly dark. So
Yeah, I co-sign that. I mean, speaking of kind of dark, most of the show is kind of just lit a little bit on the dark side. But the final scene almost is we get this grocery store, which is, I think, Barry finally going to his private space or whatever. And it's very, I mean, cleanly lit. It's lit like a grocery store. It looks like a grocery store. And that's what, you see, like, they do the soup thing and the gum thing. Like, what do you think the show is trying to say there? Is that Barry can't really kind of come up with his own ideas, so like even when he's dreaming, all he can come up with is what everyone else told him? Or does he really have a thing with soup and gum? I mean,
I think it's probably the first part there, and I think it also kind of speaks to the fact that Sally's there with him. Like he couldn't even do that alone, right? All the other actors that we saw do that experiment were able to go to their private place alone. Barry can't, and he needed Sally there and needed her to be kind of a part of it, which I think is going to hope maybe be some kind of foreshadowing with his character development throughout, where he's just can't be by himself doing this acting gig. He needs this community. I don't really know yet, but and we're not going to spoil anything, but I do think that that they're trying to say something with that for sure. That's the end of it. Like, we just did our recap, man. But before we hand out our awards, let's see what other people thought about this episode. Over on IMDb, this episode, titled Make the Unsafe Choice, episode 3, has a rating of 7.8, and that puts it in a tie for the third lowest rated episode of Barry out of the 24 available episodes throughout the first 3 seasons. Mills, what do you think about this, man? Is this a bottom 4 episode of Barry for you?
at the end of the day, it's probably close to that. This is a good episode in that I enjoyed a few scenes in particular. I thought there was some good character development, but overall, there's not really any major point you're going to come back to and be like, "Oh, watch this." Or if you're getting someone into Barry, I wouldn't choose to go with it here. And again, this is really kind of semantics here, because this is a 7.8, but then I think if you can, take it up to like an 8.0, that probably brings another 10 episodes into play or something like that. So I think every episode of Barry is a good episode, but I can see how this could be kind of in the bottom 4. Jamie G, you think anything differently?
It's so hard because there's just not that many of these. I guess, I don't know. I like the episode. I think maybe if it felt a little bit longer, and maybe there was some kind of fluff. I'm gonna say I guess so. I'm not like overly like banging the table that like, yes, this is a terrible episode, because I still really enjoyed it. But I guess that it's there.
Yeah, you could probably trim a little bit of fat out of it or something like that. I think, that not every scene seems kind of urgent or whatever. In the plot stuff is a little bit kind of like, I enjoyed the police stuff, but it's a little bit kind of, it feels shoehorned in a little bit. So that brings us to the part where we kind of, I wouldn't say poke fun at Barry or say that we can do things better, but Bill Hader himself has admitted that they do not spend a lot of time on episode titles. So, Jamie G, let me ask you, can you come up with a better episode title than, throughout the chapter 2, let's just say, Make the Unsafe Choice? Anything better?
I think just simply Soup.
That would have been that would have been an interesting one.
Just Soup. I think I would have been. I think you would have got there, and it would have hit too. I actually making a case for Soup here.
I like What Emotion is Soup is pretty good. My runner up was the mailing bullet concept. I think that would intrigue me, but my number 1 alt title was Little What Leads to Big What.
Oh, come on, man. No Goran's Garage.
That's more of a state of mind, man.
That it is. that it is. Let us know what your alt titles are. We love this, man. We'd love to hear them. Hit us up, and Barry Podcast, let us know what your alts are, because now we're going to express to you how we feel about this episode title, Make the Unsafe Choice, by handing out our awards. We'll start by each choosing our favorite quote or dialogue exchange from the episode. Mills, I'm up first here. And look, man, I'm going to go with one of the classics of this episode. I've got to do it. I'm just going to go with Gene when he's trying to give Barry the prep speech, and he tells him that he once auditioned for the guy that robbed the house on Full House, and he carried a loaded Beretta with him just to feel the weight of it. And, Barry's exchange with, did you get the part? And he's like, oh, they freaked out. This was just fantastic, dude. And I think just, again, give me all the Gene, 3 weeks in a row. I want all the Gene. And this is awesome. So I'm going with that.
We've already kind of talked about a couple of things. So that brings me down to one of my alts. But you know what? It's worth it. And this isn't the scene where Hank and Goran are going all fanboy over the arrival of this great assassin. And Hank says,
He must have murdered over what, hundreds?
More.
Way more.
He's unreal. Simply unreal.
Okay, when I was kid, I saw him once walking out the discotheque. He flicked cigarette at bird, knocked it out of sky.
I mean, if you can flick a cigarette and knock a bird out of the sky, that is pretty impressive.
That's next level.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to be there for that. I mean, I don't want to, harm any birds or whatever, or, pollute the land, but still pretty impressive. That brings us to our favorite moment or scene from Make the Unsafe Choice. It is my turn to go first. And I honestly, man, I have to give it to Loach just trying to be funny. He tried so hard with this Romeo Madison. He was training her, like he was, yes, Loach. I feel like you're never getting another award in your life. I have to give you this one, so at least you get something. Jamie G, favorite scene or moment from Make the Unsafe Choice?
Oh man, well, there's a bunch of them in here. I am going to go with Fuchs at the dining room table, eating his steak, drinking his wine in all of his glory here. I mean, for a guy who just almost had his teeth filed down, stained blood, been living in a garage for a day, this, with the bike lock around his neck, this dude is living large here, man. I gotta give it to him. This was so funny, both the physical, just his ability, and his continued manipulation of Goran. Really enjoyed this one. My favorite moment.
He is the master manipulator.
He is the master manipulator for sure. And that brings us to our Greek freak of assassins, which is our MVP of the episode. I guess it's my turn to go first here, and I'm going to stay on the same hill and literally die there. I am giving it to Fuchs. And look, the reason why, Magnum Mills, is not only was this a great episode for Fuchs to just kind of, really demonstrate Stephen Root's acting ability and how good he is at this character, and he really shines here. But dude, can you think of a character that improved his position any better? I mean, maybe Barry, but because he got the girl. But honestly, man, Fuchs went from literally being locked up in the garage, gonna get killed, then having the best assassin to ever grace, God's green earth show up, to then dealing with an emotional Goran, to then sitting at the table, drinking a red wine and eating steak. I mean, this guy is moving on up, and he used his silver tongue to get him what he needed to get done. So I'm giving it up to Fuchs.
Fair enough. I have to go another way and just, the MVP can mean whatever you want it to be. It can be the guy who gained the most in the episode, or it can be just the guy who made the biggest, or girl, whatever, whoever the fuck you are, dog, cat, horse, whatever they have in here, but it's whoever made the biggest impact for me. And I have to go with Svoka, dude. Like, this dude comes in, he's a 45-year-old, 88-year-old looking motherfucker who, it's like, my wife and kid left me. He's all sad. Fuchs tries to kick game, and he's not having it. He's like, you know what? I'd rather just blow my goddamn head off, because that's the only way I can really be free. So, what is it? On Vogue said, free your mind and the rest will follow. Shout out Svoka. You've freed your mind, and hopefully the rest will follow.
Colorblind. Don't be
Don't be so
shallow.
shallow.
Bring your mind.
And we are certainly not on Vogue, nor are we Roddy T's, any kind of Rotten Tomatoes, but we still have to do our best to give a grade to Make the Unsafe Choice.
Because I'm the Fonz, huh? Hey!
In honor of Henry Winkler, Gene Cousineau himself, we grade each episode of Barry on a scale of 1 to 10 Fonzies. Hey! I'm up first here. And I believe last episode I went 7.5. I'm going to keep it right there. Not a bad episode. Again, I think every episode of Barry is a good episode of television, but it did seem a little bit bloated. There were a few standout scenes, but there were other scenes that felt like they existed just to move the plot along. I think they could have done a little bit better. You got room for growth. You can be a grower, not a shower. Jamie G, give me your episode grade. Lay some Fonzies. I'd make the Unsafe Choice.
I'm going to make the Unsafe Choice here because I think last episode I graded it a 78. 78 was the last episode. I'm bumping this down a little bit to 76. Same reason. I think it just seemed a little bit, it was longer, but it shouldn't feel longer. And it did. It had some kind of just slow moments, but a bunch of stuff that worked really well. I think they probably could have cut out some of the Barry kind of stalking and waiting. I think they probably could have cut out some of the scene kind of leading up to Sally, to going into her rehearsal. There's just a few things here and there, but still a very good episode. We're trying to be tough here. Okay, so I'm going 7.6 A's.
That's very nice, but I would say, like, if you were, got caught saying it was longer, but it shouldn't feel longer, that's probably what you're saying to your wife after she had cheated on you. So, that is what it is. And that brings us to the spoiler section. And this is the point where we give you that warning. If you do not want to be spoiled on anything from future episodes or other news, interviews, podcasts, whatever about Barry, go ahead, check out now. Thanks again for checking out the Barry Podcast. Again, find us wherever you get your pods, on the social media, YouTube, all that. Just search for Barry Podcast. Otherwise, stay right here because we are about to kick it with a little bit of spoiler discussion. Jamie G, Gene quotes from his books here, especially the Patrick Swayze quote thing that we get. Does this not feel a lot more like the Gene that we know, like through season 3, like the true Hollywood stories Gene we know and love?
Yes. And the first thing I thought of, oh man, this is Gene. This is Gene. And I love that I didn't recognize it the first time going through. I love that they already started planting the seed and laying the foundation for this incredible storyline with Gene way back in episode 3, with him being this kind of rogue maniac. Same thing when he brought a loaded gun to the
that actually comes up again. I think in season 3, one of the PAs, when Barry is pitching Gene to like come into the laws of humanity or whatever, and he suggests Gene is like, and one boy's like, is that the guy who brought the loaded gun to the Full House set? So I think that they even looped that back around in season 3. 100%.
Yes. Very cool. And let's talk just a little bit that last scene, Magnum Mills. I want to just go back to there with the grocery store, right? This kind of seems like something that Bill Hader kind of uses when he has these weird, not flashbacks, but kind of in these altered states. And we saw it a lot in season 3, the episode where he gets, poisoned. And he's kind of, going back and forth on things. So I think there was a little bit of kind of, they realized, hey, we can do something here to kind of tell a different part of the story through these altered kind of realities. And I think this is the first time we saw it.
Yeah, and we get a couple of kind of, I should say, what do they call forwards at this point about Sally, where we see here kind of struggling with the idea of playing a mother, but by the time she's ready to break Joplin, she's obviously overcome that because she casts herself as a mother, and eventually takes her daughter so real that when she's having that blowout with Natalie in the elevator, she gets mad that like Natalie wrote a daughter for herself in her show because Natalie doesn't have a daughter, and Natalie's like, well, Sally, you don't have a daughter either. So I think it really gets us into the head of Sally, especially because we see, like, we love Sally, don't get me wrong, but you can see like she can be kind of narcissistic, right? Like she she believes in herself. And I think to be someone like a world-class actor or actress, you have to have like that irrational confidence in yourself. But it's definitely bordering on narcissism, and she pretty much trashes everyone she works with. So it's that kind of person that, you know, you met, you're friends with. Most of us know this kind of person, and they're very nice to your face, but then you hear behind their back, like, they're talking shit about you. And obviously when they're talking about you to you, they're just talking shit about everyone else. So, you know, it's one of those things you figure out. If everyone is eventually hating on everyone while they're talking to you, they're probably hating on you when they're not talking to you.
Yeah. And you know, we also get the first mention of Cristobal, who we know becomes a character that we come to love in season 3, especially as he dates Hank. But the first mention of Cristobal here, and interesting that Goran refers to him as a crazy man.
Yeah, he doesn't seem that crazy to me, but what is a little bit crazy, it's probably the last one thing here, is like, because Fuchs tells a story here about, you know, how somebody chose to commit suicide over continuing to listen to him. He tells a similar story to Jim Moss when they're in a car and they're driving, and eventually, you know, he pulls up to the police station there towards the end of season 3, and we find out that, you know, he's chosen to turn Fuchs in instead of going along with his Revenge Panther thing. But it's the same concept. Like, Fuchs was talking to a guy and he got so sick of listening to him that he just went out back and hung himself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, literally listening to this guy can be deadly.
Yeah. Stay away from him, man. He's dangerous. And what's not dangerous is this show, watching it and listening to our podcast. And that's a wrap on chapter 3. Make the unsafe choice. No matter what IMDb thinks, I think season 1 has been pretty great so far. Excited for chapter 4. Commit to you. Which is up next? Anything to add here, Magnum Mills?
Nah, not too much, man. I'm surprised, like, pleasantly so. We're almost to the halfway point of season 1. Maybe we can actually get all of season 1 and season 2 done before season 4 drops. We've seen that Barry is not necessarily the greatest with making deadlines. Feels kind of, you know, real to life, or entertainment crossing over with real life or whatever. But, you know, we're still waiting for a release date on that. Once we get one in a trailer, we will let you know. But until then, we're just going to be banging these shits out, yo.
Thank you again for checking out the Barry podcast. We hope that you enjoyed our show and we added something to your Barry experience. Hopefully it was very Barry. Whether you're doing a rewatch or checking out Barry for the first time, we're glad to have you with us. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Mills, I think we're ready to get out of here.
Basically, I think we're pretty close. You nailed most of that. Just remember to remind people that you can find the Barry Podcast wherever you get your pods, on social media at Barry Podcast, the YouTube channels at JoeBlowFootballShow.com, and that pretty much wraps it up. On behalf of myself, Magnum Mills, and Jamie G, the co-presidents of the Mitch Fan Club, we'll see you on the next episode of the Barry Podcast.
And always remember to turn off Wi-Fi before you press the detonate button.